Hello, welcome to the channel Wise Stories. Enjoy watching.
Hearing the strange words of the little girl in the kindergarten, the new teacher decided to keep an eye on things. But as soon as she opened the door, she froze. Roman skillfully maneuvered his car through the congested streets. He and Anna were late for kindergarten again. Who could predict how the morning would go? He had an important business meeting with a client today, and they overslept. Then the oatmeal got burnt, and to top it off, the cat Corazon seemed to have gone mad. There were still a few days until March, but he was already in a romantic mood, sitting on the windowsill and demanding to have the blinds lifted so he could admire the neighborhood cats. The man listened intently as his daughter chatted away in the back seat about her kindergarten affairs. She was saying that their group had lost a teacher and that a new one was supposed to start today. The girl conspiratorially lowered her voice and then announced solemnly, "Our nanny told the other nanny that the new one is a good option. They won't just take anyone at an elite institution. She has both education and experience." Roman smiled at the mature reasoning of his 6-year-old daughter and thought, how quickly time has flown. It seems like just yesterday I was teaching Anna to take her first steps, hold a spoon, and pronounce complicated words, and now, in just 6 months, my daughter will be starting first grade. No, the saying that other people's children grow up quickly while your own time drags on doesn't hold true. I didn't even notice how these 6 years flew by. The car stopped by a colorful fence decorated with characters from fairy tales and cartoons. Energetic Anna jumped out of the car and was already hugging her father, who hadn't even had time to get out from behind the wheel. "Daddy, look, our group is already playing outside, which means we missed breakfast." "Don't worry, I poured honey on my porridge. It turned out delicious anyway. I'm off now, don't come to see me off, and don't be late this evening. I start missing you after lunch. And after my nap, I peek out the window. It's nice here, but with you, it's magical." With that, the little fox, capable of melting her father's heart, disappeared in an instant. Roman drove off and, in a minute, merged back into the flow of traffic. While he waited, he would take another look at the sketches of his restoration work on his tablet. He had gotten used to meeting clients prepared. Anna skipped over to her little friends. She was a very sociable girl. And suddenly, upon seeing the new teacher, she stopped in her tracks as if rooted to the spot. She didn't hide the reason for her unexpected emotions, she blurted it all out. "Oh, I know you. We have a photo of you at home. Dad often looks at it." Berta, standing partially turned towards the ringing voice of the little girl. A beautiful girl in a bright burgundy jacket and a knitted hat with a white pom-pom looked at her with curious eyes. The girl continued, stumbling over her words. "Your photo is on Dad's nightstand by the bed, and he doesn't let me touch it. He says that when I grow up, he will definitely tell me who you are. And here I met you in person, not in a picture. There you had a different hairstyle, a short haircut and trendy ripped jeans. You look different now." Berta looked in astonishment at one of her pupils, who was clearly confusing something, but she didn't try to correct the girl. She extended her strong little hand and introduced herself. "Let's get to know each other. You must be Anna? I'm your new teacher, Senora Berta. We're preparing for the women's holiday, assigning roles for the performance in honor of moms and grandmas. Who will come to your celebration, your mom or your grandma?" Anna looked down, responding reluctantly. "I'm the only girl in our family, it's just me. Dad and Corazon are the men." The teacher faltered. She needed to be more cautious with a still unfamiliar child, especially not knowing her family's situation. Meanwhile, Anna approached a group of kids and started animatedly telling them something. The incident resolved itself. Berta sighed with relief, but decided to clarify with the caregiver what was going on with Anna's family. Her colleague was quite talkative. "This girl has been with us since she was 3. Her father pays for her services promptly, without delays. Our kindergarten isn't affordable for everyone. As far as I know, Matthias lives alone with her. Her father is involved in something creative, either a sculptor or a restorer. I'll show you Anna's work later. The girl has talent. No one else in the kindergarten can sculpt with plasticine like she can. She's made all sorts of little creatures, even a dinosaur and a mammoth from cartoons. Berta frantically tried to remember the surname Matthias. She had never heard of any artist or sculptor in her family. There's no way her photo could be on this girl's father's nightstand. There must be some mistake. If the girl excels at sculpting, it's possible she has a well-developed imagination. Maybe that's why everything got mixed up in her head. Berta's first day at work went without incidents, but that evening, an unexpected event occurred. Anna was one of the last children to be picked up by her father. The girl rushed to meet him as soon as he appeared near the path by the playground. She whispered something in his ear for a long time, and they approached Berta together. What happened next was like a scene from a movie, as if it were a prank filmed with a hidden camera. The man approached the teacher, looked her in the eyes intently, and then launched into a furious tirade. "What's this, Carmela? Already made it to kindergarten? How did they let you near the children? Or have you stopped wandering, running away from home, and traveling the world in these 6 years? Have you settled down? Found a place to stay?" In Berta's mind, everything fell into place at once. This man had mistaken her for her older sister, Carmela. They had looked almost identical since childhood, like two peas in a pod, especially if they wore matching clothes and had the same hairstyles. Berta had even taken exams for her sister a few times at school. Not one teacher had figured out that the answers to the test questions were written not by the graduating Carmela. It would have been easy to tell something was off if the sisters had been standing next to each other. Berta had been involved in sports since childhood and had caught up to Carmela in height by the 6th grade, but only their father and mother knew about it. The girls loved to play pranks on everyone. Close family members could distinguish them instantly based on other details. Carmela had sharp and piercing eyes, while Berta was kind-hearted and gentle but with a strong character when it came to something just or good. The early urge of the older daughter to sneak out of the house had come as a complete surprise to their parents. At first, when Carmela was 12, she had attached herself to an older youth group, and then she began to go out excessively, unaware of time limits. They were both strikingly beautiful, with that bright, eye-catching beauty that makes people stop and look back. Both were statuesque, slender, yet with pronounced feminine curves. However, Carmela tried to accentuate her looks even more with certain details: bold sunglasses covering half her face, bright makeup. She was the quintessential vamp. At 15, she began wearing a short boyish haircut that suited her incredibly well, making her large brown eyes even more expressive. Berta wore her thick hair in a ponytail at the back of her head, taking good care of it. She never cut it. She used only clear lip gloss, no bright makeup. For the exam, instead of her sister, who had taken off, she wore a short wig that belonged to their mother. It saved her that they were taking the final exam at a different school, where few people knew the sisters well. Their mother was a psychologist by training. She understood immediately that something was wrong with Carmela. Professionals call this syndrome dramamania. Ordinary people would say it's a passion for wandering. The first time Carmela didn't come home to sleep was at 14. She disappeared for 3 days. When she reappeared, she was all torn, hungry, dirty, and infinitely happy. Her eyes sparkled with a feverish gleam, and her cheeks were flushed. The fact that the whole family had been searching for her, worrying, hardly sleeping or eating, didn't bother her at all. She whispered excitedly to Berta, "I was with some kids at the train station. I saw the conductor dash to a kiosk at the far end of the platform, leaving the train carriage door open. There was no one around. I couldn't resist. I climbed into a clean compartment prepared for boarding passengers. I hid on the upper bunk, fidgeted around, and fell asleep. They only discovered me at the next station. Naturally, they kicked me out. That's how I made my way home along the highway. I stopped a truck, sang a tune to an old driver about missing my train and needing to catch up with my parents, and he believed me. He gave me a free ride. I saw so many interesting things, Berta. You can't imagine how cool it was." Carmela's escapades continued with remarkable regularity. Their mother and father foolishly hoped these antics were just episodes of adolescence and that Carmela would outgrow them. Nothing of the sort happened. She disappeared more and more frequently, roaming the country and then returning home to lick her wounds. She always came back looking thin, again in strange clothes, giving the impression that she hadn't showered for weeks. But she considered all this normal. Her eyes sparkled with pleasure. After cleaning up and getting some sleep, solving some issues, like visiting the dentist or going to school for her diploma, Carmela would plunge back into her wild ways. Their parents never dared to send her to a clinic. The mother, a psychologist, knew that in a clinic, they would turn her beautiful daughter into a vegetable. The mother sadly told Berta, "It's better that she roams than becomes a mindless creature. It seems our fate is to have a wandering daughter. Science knows many such cases. Fighting this passion is useless. We'll have to accept it." Berta grew up as the complete opposite. While her sister was exploring the world with men and a bottle in her hand, Berta was studying. She wasn't a bookworm. She didn't ignore youth parties, but she didn't put them at the forefront of her life either. After partying, she would go back to her textbooks and notes. Then, 7 years ago, Carmela returned from another trip with a big belly. In response to Berta's silent question, she said, "Oh, you naive little sister. I've been pregnant for 7 months and moving around. You need to pay more attention. Mom figured it out right away but couldn't stop me from traveling. She asked me to come back here to give birth. How was I to know where the baby would decide to arrive? I'll give birth and bring it to you. Have fun." Mom ordered it. She decided to play grandmother. Carmela miscalculated that time. Seeing what she was up to, their parents quietly called an ambulance at night. They gave Carmela an injection and took her to the hospital. But there is no obstacle that can stop a dramamaniac who feels the call of freedom and boundless will. The clinic was not the most expensive, rather, it was comfortable. 2 days later, Carmela escaped by climbing out of a second-floor window using sheets tied together. Her resentment towards her treacherous parents and her sister, who hadn't warned her about the conspiracy, was so great that she disappeared for a year. All attempts to find her were in vain. The next time Carmela showed up, she looked respectable and claimed that she had met a man who shared her passions, an avid traveler. But this time he had money. When her sister asked about the baby, she waved it off. He didn't survive the birth. What did you expect? I've never been to doctors or women's consultations. The boy had some pathology. His life functions ceased even in the womb. That's just how fate played out. Berta turned pale. But he could have been born alive and healthy if his mother had cared for him even a little. If she hadn't only thought about her own pleasures. Carmela, how could you? To ruin your own baby through negligence like that. What do you know about it, little brat? You have no life experience and yet you try to teach me. That was when they had their first serious fight, arguing for a long time, trying to prove their points to each other, but they never reached a common ground. There was an abyss of alienation between them. And now, the girl in kindergarten claims that there is, apparently, a photo of Carmela on her father's nightstand at home. What could connect them? Could it be that Carmela's child is alive? The kindergarten teacher, Berta, suddenly stood up from her chair, stepped away from the table where she was filling out the children's registration journal, and calmly said, "You're mistaken, I'm not Carmela. That's my older sister's name, but I have no information about her. The last time I saw her was 3 years ago. She was living in a common-law marriage with another man then. Neither I nor our parents know anything about her now. She didn't want to communicate with her own family, and we stopped insisting." Roman froze mid-sentence. Thoughts raced through his mind one after another. He had made a mistake. This was not Carmela. Had he confused two women with his abnormal secret love? And this was despite his artistic eye, capable of noticing even the smallest details in a painting. The man began to examine Anna's new teacher more closely. The resemblance to Carmela was striking. But this young woman had long hair, styled in a beautiful bun, and warm, kind eyes. Now she was looking at him inquisitively, as if waiting for new questions. But he was stunned into silence. He briefly apologized for his mistake, grabbed Anna by the hand, and led her toward the exit. Roman was born and raised in a family of artists. His childhood was spent in a studio surrounded by easels and paints. Conversations revolved around new exhibitions, and books were always filled with colorful illustrations. At the age of 5 or 6, he learned not to string letters into words, but to hold a pencil in his hand. His father and mother praised his naive childhood sketches. They loved to draw nature and cityscapes with some whimsical buildings. They lived happily, though they always paid attention to household matters. Their grandmother was the household fairy. While everyone indulged in artistic dreams, she would prepare lunch and arrange clean clothes in the cabinets. Later, when Roman was left alone to manage the household, he marveled at how the elderly woman managed to do everything. Her porridge was never burnt, and the aromas of dinner embarrassed all the neighbors nearby. They would suddenly have a reason to drop by for matches or salt and find themselves at a friendly table. Roman didn't idealize his parents, especially as he grew older. They were careless but not malicious. They simply got too caught up in their latest creations. They exhibited their work frequently and were fashionable painters. Their paintings were eagerly bought, and money was always available at home. Once a year, the three of them traveled together. Traveling was a second passion for his parents. They taught Roman how to pitch a tent and cook over a campfire from a young age. For some reason, the soup with canned meat made by the two artists turned out much better than their home cooking experiments. Roman always felt that their family was untouched by the realities of life since everything was so bright, colorful, emotional, and positive for them. Fate had other plans. Suddenly, his father stopped painting nature and focused solely on portraits. And in those portraits, there was always the same young woman. It later became clear to everyone that Roman's father had fallen in love with the model. The girl urgently needed money, and her appearance perfectly matched the requirements of the art studio where an experienced artist taught. Their love was mutual, even so touching and sincere that Roman's mother let her husband have his mistress. She couldn't bear to watch him suffer at home, how he longed for his passion, how he waited for their next meeting. Later, she explained her decision to her son. "You know, Roman, your father and I are more like kindred spirits. There was never any passionate attachment between us. We were bound by common interests and an understanding without words. I had to let him go since he found his true woman, his soulmate. That happens. I will cope with our breakup. Moreover, I can confess that I also have an interest on the side that I previously didn't pursue. Now I will be free and can arrange my own personal life." For Roman, her confession was a real revelation. It was the first time he faced the fact that in adult life, things are not always as they seem. He learned that not all marriages are made in heaven and that people can live together for many years on a platform of light mutual sympathy without love and without a sense of responsibility for a common child. Roman found it difficult to cope with his parents' divorce. Moreover, things got worse. Both his mother and his father, who was lost in the clouds, erased him from their lives as if he had never existed. They were busy with their own lives. They left him in the care of his grandmother for 6 months while they dealt with pressing issues. And it turned out to be forever. Roman's grandmother was a golden person, active, progressive, and energetic. She didn't give her grandson a moment of peace. She involved him in great art. She would invite him to theater performances to see famous actors in person or to premieres of conceptual films by great directors. She wanted her grandson to understand what it meant to live in a play, not just earn a fee. It was she who insisted that Roman enroll in an art school after graduation, not just any department, but one that worked on restoring the old masters. From childhood, he excelled not at creating new works, but at restoring masterpieces of the past. He revived a portrait of his grandfather painted by one of his father's friends after a flood in their apartment so well that it became better than before. Roman and his grandmother lived in perfect harmony. She poured all her tenderness, affection, and care into him. While his parents traveled from city to city with their new partners, they called him only occasionally, while his grandmother comforted him. "Don't worry, my dear, we're like two lovebirds. Even though I'm old now, you don't mind my company. Let's get together this evening. I'll bake pancakes, and our neighbor Lucida will bring her cherry liqueur. There's such a Mexican series on TV right now, you won't be able to take your eyes off it. You'll have plenty of time to wander around later." He didn't yet know that his grandmother felt that her time on this earth was running short. Her sick heart, worn out by worries over her wayward daughter and son-in-law, and for Roman, was increasingly beating out of rhythm. She prayed to the heavens. "Just let me hold on until my grandson reaches adulthood, and then the reliable Lucida will help. She won't leave the boy unattended. His parents are unlikely to call him back. The little one in my son-in-law's new family is growing up, while my daughter travels with her easel, hoping to find new picturesque scenes of nature and achieve fame by putting them on canvas." The heavens clearly approved of her selfless love for her grandson. She even managed to bake a wonderful homemade cake for his 18th birthday and set a table for his classmates filled with delicious dishes. She held on for 3 more months and quietly passed away in her sleep. At the funeral, Roman's parents appeared, and everyone was surprised at how grown-up and handsome their son had become, following in their footsteps to steady restoration. It wasn't an artistic dynasty, but still. They flew out of their mother's house with relief. Barely 9 days had passed. A new family was waiting for the father, while the mother rushed off to her paints and brushes. Roman thought, "They have become strangers to me, nothing hurts, nothing pinches my heart. It's only my grandmother for whom my soul weeps." She had turned out to be his only best friend. As a gesture of goodwill, Roman's mother transferred the title of her apartment to him. Now he had a solid roof over his head in an old sturdy house with high ceilings. He had something to live on. The talented young man was already invited as an apprentice by renowned restorers from his very first year. He had a skilled hand and a clear idea of what needed to be adjusted and where. From under his deft brush, paintings emerged noticeably transformed. His older colleagues passed off his efforts as their own. But they paid him well for his work. Combined with his scholarship, Roman was not struggling. And he hadn't lived in luxury with his grandmother, so he was used to economizing somewhere. His circle of friends learned that Roman had a free apartment, and they were thrilled. To not leave their friend alone in trouble, many eager helpers quickly came forward. One party flowed into another. For a couple of weeks, Roman kept waking up in the arms of unfamiliar girlfriends. The girls were in no hurry to clean up the apartment after their noisy gatherings. Roman would later gather the glasses with unfinished wine and floating cigarette butts with disgust and head out to take out the trash with cans. After his beloved grandmother's passing, he unexpectedly discovered that in everyday life, he was an absolute amateur. He also realized that a perpetual party was not his thing. He loved to be alone, to work in the room his parents had designated as a workshop. He could calmly inhale the scent of paints and run his finger along the tips of the brushes. When he learned that he was no longer being invited to gatherings, the ranks of Roman's friends thinned out almost immediately. A couple of days later, Lucida appeared at his doorstep, standing with an important posture, and educated him. "I knew you would want to feel the taste of freedom. So, how do you like it? Your next visitor will be loneliness, my son. I'm much younger than your grandmother, and I've long drawn my widow's lot. You know my life story, you'll get used to it too in time. So, let's hold on to each other for now. You help me with one thing, I help you with another, and we'll start with culinary training. You need to learn to take care of yourself so you won't have to look for women hoping for a hearty breakfast." And that was that. A couple of months later, Roman could cook porridge, make an omelet, fry potatoes, and prepare soup all by himself. He would pick up pasta, sausage, cheese, and pickled tomatoes and cucumbers at the supermarket. What more could a creatively inclined student want? There was enough money for more, but he saved for more expensive and quality tools. Good restoration knives, scalpels, and spatulas didn't come cheap. He graduated from the art school with honors. After his grandmother passed away, he only goofed off a little, and then he focused on work without distractions. His career began to gain momentum like a well-tuned mechanism. It helped that he was not above running errands for artists. Now clients sought him out directly, valuing his individual and unconventional approach to each work of art. His income grew. He rarely took time off. He had forgotten about his passion for traveling. In the 5 years that flew by in an instant alongside paintings and colors, he met with his parents only a couple of times. Now it could be said with confidence that he was a cut-off slice from them, definitively and irrevocably. At 27, now a fairly respected young restorer in all circles, Roman spent all his free time at country spa hotels. He zipped there in a good foreign car. He had turned his apartment into a toy-like haven. The only thing that hadn't changed was his warm relationship with the relentlessly aging Lucida. Once a month, he took his companion out to the theater or an exhibition. Lucida always prepared in advance for the event. She would go to the salon to get her hair done, cover her treacherous gray hair, and wear her only formal dress made of fine wool. She allowed Roman to pamper her with a new brooch or bracelet for her birthday or Christmas. She didn't care for gold, but silver jewelry suited her black outfits perfectly. Lucida loved it when Roman met someone he knew at an arts venue and gallantly introduced her. "My lady. A very important person to me." At that moment, the old woman's heart melted like ice cream under the sun. For Roman, it was a tribute to his grandmother. He didn't shy away from female company in general. Laughter from another girlfriend often rang out in his apartment. He was generous with gifts, but things never went beyond short-term romances, including with married women. They spent pleasant times together, dining in restaurants, even going out of town, but Roman always joked, "I haven't met my one and only yet. As soon as that happens, I won't keep it a secret." With a whirl of paintings sent for restoration, contracts with museums, and commissions from private collectors, one fine day, Roman realized that he was so exhausted that he no longer had the strength to even look at his beloved brushes and spatulas, let alone hold them. That's when he decided to take a long creative break for a couple of months. Upon hearing this stunning news, a friend from his former university classmates immediately began persuading him to go on an expedition to various cities with him. He made an enticing argument, saying, "Roman, I've gathered a pleasant company of people. We're going on a journey by car on a whim, wherever the left leg calls. No pre-planned route, we'll stop in the most secluded places. I may not have become as great a restorer as you, but I'm not at all disheartened by this arrangement. Freedom, that's what has always attracted and beckoned me. Leave all your worries behind. You won't be fixing someone else's creations, but painting something of your own. Later, you can put together an album of memories of the trip to show your children and grandchildren how adventurous you were in your youth." Roman didn't need much persuading. He immediately recalled the adventures with his parents, tents, nature, campfires, and the happiness of being together. At first, he thought about inviting the latest girlfriend he had been spending time with, but he realized he didn't want to do that at all. The girl loved not him but only his fit body, visits to expensive restaurants, and gifts. At the river with a scarf, she would quickly get bored and would become a target for mosquitoes and gnats, leading to a lot of complaints. She wasn't suited to be a comrade in arms. And Lucida, given her age, was someone he couldn't take with him. By the way, his neighbor and loyal friend wholeheartedly supported his decision to go on a trip. She said she would make sure to pack jars of delicious pickles and cherry liqueur for him to take along. Roman informed all his regular clients that he would be absent for some time. He bought a brand new tent consisting of 2 comfortable compartments, got himself a sleeping bag, and other necessary camping gear. He was now 100% ready for the adventure. He loaded the car quickly. He hugged Lucida, who had prepared a whole box of provisions for him, and gave her the keys to his apartment so she could come in and feed Corazon. The small, fluffy orange cat had recently been rescued from the street. It wasn't so empty being alone in the apartment. The veterinarian had said the furry little creature was at most a couple of months old. someone had abandoned him, or perhaps he had wandered away from his mother cat and gotten lost. Lucida promised she wouldn't leave the pet alone and would take him in for the time being. With that, they parted ways. The trip turned out to be wonderful: new landscapes, new people, a close-knit group. Yet, this time, the choice of a suitable camping spot in the woods did not promise any discoveries. The site was already well populated by tourists: a fire pit with various amenities, a sanitation zone, and small clearings for setting up tents. The competition was minimal. In the distance, there was only one structure resembling a twig hut. A towel was drying on a rope nearby. Roman's group exchanged puzzled glances and set up their camp a little further away. Who knew who else might have decided to use the area for an improvised camping site? If Roman had known what awaited him in the near future, he would have fled the forest at the first opportunity. But how can one escape fate? At that moment, destiny was also cunningly entertaining itself. It sent him an unusual woman. Carmela appeared at their campfire in the evening, greeting everyone. "Hello, neighbors. I see this spot isn't empty. I just saw off some others yesterday. Today new ones have arrived. I'm Carmela, your local forest fairy or witch, whatever suits you best. What are you cooking? Will you treat a lady to dinner?" Roman stared at the young woman with wide eyes, and what he saw pleased him immensely, both as an artist and as a man. She was undeniably beautiful, with a striking allure, like a girl from another, otherworldly, esoteric realm. A sorceress, a shapeshifter in female form. She had a short, dense haircut, eyes the color of ripe brown cherries, and lips, even here in the woods, painted a shade of purple. Her figure resembled that of an ancient goddess, with every line perfect. In the forest, this vision seemed so contrasting against the backdrop of vibrant nature, as if a demon had emerged from the thicket to test the present company's resistance to temptation. Roman couldn't withstand the challenge. He felt a slight dizziness from desire. This had never happened to him before. He had always thought that the passionate longing woven from purely male instincts was not for him, that everything written in books or shown in films was fiction. A man cannot lose his head over love. Reason must be present to some degree. What reason? What caution? When Carmela sat down beside him and handed him a plastic cup to fill with wine, everything swam before his eyes. She was perceptive. She immediately felt the energy radiating from him. After a casual dinner, she led him to her tent without ceremony or explanations. Carmela opened up to him, saying that she had been wandering since she was 14 and considered it a perfectly normal way of life. Now she was a solitary traveler, attaching herself to tourists who stopped here for the night. When she got bored, she would change her location. After all, everyone chooses their own path. They were from the same town, which Roman took as a sign from above, naive as he was. He believed that Carmela, sleeping in his arms, felt the same about him. He would later learn that this was far from the truth. 3 days later, Roman's group, having left the lovesick man undisturbed all this time, began to pack up their camp. Roman stayed with Carmela and felt so happy. It seemed to him that the stars were shining brighter and the sun generously bestowed warmth simply because such a vibrant woman was beside him. The revelation came quickly once new tourists appeared in the forest. That evening, Carmela said to him, "Roman, thank you for the pleasant moments, but I need you to free my humble forest abode. I liked Alvaro at the campfire tonight. I'll spend this night with him." The man thought he had misheard, that this was all a terrible nightmare, but it was all too real. Carmela was already skillfully gathering his belongings to take them to his car. Her briefly sparked interest in him faded just as quickly. He felt as if the ground was slipping away beneath him. He couldn't live without her. He couldn't breathe without her. Roman tried to talk to Carmela once more. He invited her to leave with him and even to become his wife. In response, she just laughed in his face. "You'll curse the day you asked me to stay with you just a couple of months from now. I won't be able to endure sitting in one place for longer. You'll get tired of guarding me, which is why I'm letting you go so easily. Freedom isn't for you. You're an intellectual boy, while I'm a forest bandit." We're not a match. After the conversation, he walked to his car with leaden feet. He wanted to turn around and go back. He couldn't think straight. Just last night, she had whispered words of love to him, and today she had turned him away. He wanted so desperately to convince her, to persuade her to be with him. He sat down in the car like a robot, called his friends to tell them he wouldn't be going with them any longer, and decided to go home. But he couldn't forget Carmela even 6 years later. She appeared in his dreams at night, laughing brightly, saying, "Roman, do you still remember me?" She had become his nightmare. He only forgot about her when he carefully began to strip the layers of paint from an old painting. After experiencing intense emotional pain, his restoration work improved. He was still in high demand. His passionate but short romance with Carmela had a continuation. They met again the following spring. That day, nothing indicated surprises, so the persistent ring at the door surprised Roman immensely. He thought it was Lucida again, bringing him something to eat, freshly baked pastries or a pot of soup. He opened the door without looking through the peephole. Standing on the doorstep was his secret love, his trouble, a piece of his heart. She smiled serenely, then stepped aside and turned back to where a woven basket stood on the steps. "I brought you a gift, my accidental forest suitor. You awarded me with it, so now you'll deal with the consequences. There's a letter in the basket, you'll figure it out." She turned abruptly, sprinting down the steps without looking back. Roman peeked into the basket and felt a chill run down his spine. A baby was peacefully sleeping on a blanket folded several times inside the basket. Next to it lay a large envelope, a note from Carmela stating that this was his child, the fruit of their fiery nights. An officially written refusal regarding the girl, along with a photograph of Carmela inscribed on the back, year, date of their meeting in the forest. On shaky legs, Roman made his way to the landing and rang Lucida's doorbell. He was incredibly confused, numb, and paralyzed, turning into a mindless figure not knowing what to do. The old woman opened the door almost immediately, as if she had been waiting for him. She looked at the man, snatched the basket from his hands, which was slipping from his weakening fingers. "Goodness, what happened, Roman? Come in and tell me. You look so pale." Berta still couldn't shake off the conversation with Anna's father. She had come a long way to secure a job as a teacher in this elite kindergarten. There were only 10 children in the group, and every day they held developmental activities ranging from foreign languages to dancing. They knew how to nurture both the mind and body here. They paid their employees well, especially those willing to integrate into the team and become a significant part of it. Berta thought bitterly. Even here they found me. I was caught off guard by the misdeeds of my wayward sister. I need to find out the address of the Matthias family, to trace where and how they live. Maybe this will shed light on this strange story. What kind of photo of Carmela is standing on the nightstand next to this man's bed? Diligently copying the details about the girl and her father from the journal, Berta did not delay her investigation. Neither Roman nor Anna spoke to her anymore. They greeted her politely in the morning, vanished in the evening after thanking her for the fulfilling day. It was as if a wall had grown between them and Berta. All her attempts to get closer or clarify anything were in vain. The man reacted oddly to any gesture from the teacher. His face would turn to stone, and his eyes became piercing and cold. Berta understood that Carmela had inflicted a very serious wound on him. He had yet to recover from the blow. For several days, Roman was again in some kind of delirious state. This was how he had been when Anna first arrived at his home. Now uninvited memories surrounded him once more in a crowd. Confusion, turmoil, shock. While Lucida was unfolding the newborn that day, then searching for clean sheets and towels in the cupboard, he was thinking feverishly. He was only interested in one question. What documents, proof, or testimonies of his connection to Carmela would be needed to adopt the baby and formalize her under his name? The solution came to him like an epiphany. He remembered a portrait he had restored privately for a high-ranking official. That client was a well-known lawyer in the city. When he saw the refreshed portrait of his mother, painted long ago by a famous artist, he was immensely amazed and grateful. "Roman, you've done something very important for me. My younger sister kept the image of our mother in the attic, and you've breathed life into the portrait. Remember, you can always come to me with any question. I don't like being in debt, and I'm not talking about money. Our moral debts are far more important." Leaving the girl in Lucida's care, he first called and then went to meet his friend in uniform. There were no delays. Before long, Roman Matthias became Anna's official father. They even had a bit of a debate about the name. The old woman sang lullabies to the girl. She thought the baby smiled at those words. The potential dad argued that children at that age didn't know how to smile yet. Roman was a bit of a romantic at heart. When he felt heavy-hearted or tired at the easel, he would go watch his beloved grandmother's films. Old, naive, and bright. Each of us has our own hell and our own ways of getting out of it. He still missed his grandmother and knew that if she were alive, she would certainly help him raise Anna. When the girl turned 1 year old, he unexpectedly recalled the advice of a general friend. "Roman, I appreciate your impulses, your nobility, and I accept your decision to adopt the little one, but I still advise you to take the girl to a children's clinic for a thorough examination regarding any genetic surprises from her mother. While you're there, you might as well do a DNA test to be completely at ease." Roman took this advice to heart, but then became so focused on learning to be a good, capable father that he completely forgot about the recommendation. The realities of life brought the adjustments regarding Anna's health. It was on the day when father and daughter celebrated her birthday in the park that Anna fell from a swing and lost consciousness. Roman nearly lost his mind, but the ambulance arrived at the call in no time. Within 15 minutes, Anna was already smiling at the doctors in the emergency room and babbling something in her childish language. Roman calmed down, but he still decided to have her examined by various specialists. The summary after the full examination of the little girl was encouraging. There were no deviations. The only shock for Roman was that he was not Anna's biological father. The probability of matches was 0%. Yet he could not imagine life without this girl. He kept the secret. Even Lucida didn't know that Anna was not Roman's biological daughter. However, he was sure that the news would not have changed the old woman's attitude toward the little neighbor at all. Lucida considered Anna to be her full-fledged granddaughter. She loved being with the little girl while Roman toiled over his latest painting in his workshop. She fed her favorite porridge with strawberry jam and couldn't get enough of the girl for all 6 years. Roman, for his part, still found similarities between Anna and himself, believing that the clinic had made a mistake. The girl had Carmela's eyes, but her brows, face shape, lips, and chin were his. The artist's trained eye couldn't be wrong. And it didn't matter to him now who Anna's real father was. She was and would remain his daughter. Let anyone try to contest that. Berta effortlessly found an old, sturdy house in the city center built in the Empire style. Her pupil Anna, her presumed niece, and her father lived in comfortable conditions. The Berta family had never experienced such luxury. They lived far from the center in a rather dilapidated communal apartment, which had become entirely their property after the neighbors moved out. Berta wasn't envious, she was genuinely happy for the girl. She loved children unconditionally and sincerely, regardless of the social class of her wards. After graduating from the Pedagogical Institute, she stubbornly decided to build her career not in elementary school classes, as her specialization suggested, but specifically in preschool institutions. Children aged 3 to 7 were her weakness. They absorbed everything so eagerly at that age, being such grateful listeners to fairy tales and stories. Her heart always fluttered joyfully when she was near them. Berta desperately wanted to have her own child. But without a partner, it was impossible. She constantly encountered suitors attracted to her vibrant natural beauty. Nights for a few dates, unwilling to commit themselves either through marriage or any obligations for the next 10 years. Her mother constantly quoted Cicero with his famous phrase, "Oh the times, oh the morals." Then she would add another quote from an ancient philosopher, "You must judge a man before you love him." For once you love, you no longer judge. Berta felt no relief from her mother's words. She understood that time was slipping away. Soon she would be 30, and she had neither a family nest nor even a hint of one. After diving into a couple of romances without commitments, she was now only seeking long-term, serious relationships. The situation where someone tells a woman, "You are both smart and beautiful, what do these men want?" was her situation. She was fatally unlucky with suitors. Berta paused for a moment. What kind of men did she find attractive? The answer came quickly. Perhaps men like that insufferable Roman. Moderately handsome, without sugary good looks, well-groomed, tastefully dressed, confident, this was evident in his gaze and gait. Berta quickly admonished herself. The last thing she needed was to dissect the masculine molecules of the unattainable Senor Matthias. A capital letter restorer. She didn't understand anything about brushes and paints. Drawing had never been her favorite subject in school or in her creative classes at university. Lost in her thoughts, someone suddenly grabbed her by the collar of her jacket from behind and spun her around. She was taken aback. Standing before her was the very subject of her thoughts, with a face twisted in anger. "What do you think you're doing, Berta? Are you stalking me and Anna? That's the last thing I need. What about my modest self sparked such burning interest in you? Explain right now what you've been doing in our yard near the playground for the past 3 days? Or have you deceived me? Did Carmela send you to spy on me?" Roman released Berta's collar, and then something completely unforeseen happened. Losing her footing, the teacher suddenly slipped in a puddle. It had been pouring rain all day. Berta awkwardly flailed her arms like a bird flapping its wings and landed right in the middle of the puddle. The man let out an exclamation of surprise. All his anger evaporated. "What an undisciplined creature you are, Berta. Did you stage this fall to attract everyone's attention? Come to our house, you're soaked to the bone. How did you manage to fall like that? You're drenched." Berta recoiled in indignation from his outstretched hand, but then she saw Anna's eyes. The girl looked at her father with such adoration, approving of all his suggestions and actions, that everything inside the teacher fell into place. A child couldn't be mistaken. This Roman was actually a normal, warm-hearted person. All the rest was a mask, a pretense. Perhaps he had such good teachers, or maybe he was a reserved nature who didn't like outside witnesses to his fate. She silently extended her wet and dirty hand to Roman, asking for help to get out of the puddle. Then she obediently followed him into the house. It seemed silly for an adult woman to be afraid of Roman. On the contrary, she was given a chance to find out what was really going on and what connected this man and her sister. It would be a sin not to take advantage of that. The apartment had a strong smell of paints and something else chemical, but surprisingly pleasant. The scent of freshly baked bread wove into the chorus of aromas, and a steady humming came from the kitchen. Berta immediately understood that a bread maker was working. "We just stepped out for 10 minutes with my daughter to get some cheese, and here you are, almost with binoculars," explained the owner of the house to Berta. "How could I not approach you and set you straight, so you wouldn't poke your nose into someone else's life?" "I needed to find out what connects you to my sister," the young woman replied honestly. "You wouldn't have ignored the incident at the kindergarten if you were in my position." She looked at herself in the mirror hanging in the hallway. Her appearance was extremely pitiful. Dirty water dripped from her clothes, and a small puddle had already formed on the floor. Roman escorted her to the bathroom, handed the unexpected guest a towel and a fluffy robe, and suggested, "You can freshen up for now. The only cosmetics we have in our house are men's and children's, but I don't think that will bother you." Berta wanted to dry off the excess moisture with the towel and leave it at that, but she quickly realized that was a bad idea. She was dirtier than wet, so she boldly stepped under the hot shower. After half an hour, the disheveled teacher warmed up and tossed her clothes into the washing machine. She didn't want to put on a wet sweater, dirty jeans, and a jacket over her clean body. So, she emerged from the bathroom in the robe, thinking that the hosts would forgive her this audacity. The man and the girl were waiting for her in the kitchen with hot coffee. A plate piled with sandwiches with butter and cheese sat on the table. The man made an inviting gesture for her to take a vacant stool at the table. Berta accepted, but then, unexpectedly for herself, she burst into tears. No one had cared for her besides her parents. Her personal life was a mess, and her relationship with her sister had hit rock bottom. The helpless girl inside her had long been forgotten. Roman was a bit taken aback, thinking he was doing something wrong. Why was this strange teacher of his daughter suddenly so emotional? But Berta opened up. She incoherently told a complete stranger that she was tired of loneliness and aimlessness. That the children at the kindergarten were her only solace, and she had hoped that Anna would turn out to be her biological niece, thus a kindred spirit. Later, Roman couldn't explain to himself why all these confessions made his heart feel so heavy. They melted the eternal frost within him and made his always cold eyes shine. Anna instinctively felt that the adults needed to be alone in the kitchen, that they needed to talk. She quietly slipped off the stool and went to watch a cartoon, even closing the door. But it didn't hold her attention for long. She urgently wanted to clarify one question. The girl entered the kitchen holding a portrait of Carmela, even though she knew her father had forbidden her from touching the photo. Now driven by desperate determination, she needed to find out what had been troubling her for so long. Standing in front of Berta, Anna asked, "Are you my mom? Is that why your photo is on Dad's nightstand?" Roman froze, but it was already too late. Berta, however, was completely unfazed. She hugged Anna's shoulders, pulled her close, and honestly replied, "Unfortunately, I'm not your mom, my dear. But I would really love to be." After these words, Roman immediately reconsidered punishing the girl. He kissed her fluffy head and promised they would talk about this topic again, that he would explain everything. The man who turned to Berta was no longer the cold, emotionless person he had been. He was now a surprised man, deeply affected by her words. They both sat in silence for a long time. The girl marveled at her own bravery for speaking such words out loud. Roman was bidding farewell to that other woman. He suddenly realized that he was now free from her enchanting spell. Sitting next to him was another woman, alive, genuine, kind, and courageous, worthy of his interest and feelings. He would do everything to win her heart. Envious people say that stories of suddenly ignited love in the heart are just rosy dreams that shouldn't be believed. Nonsense, skeptics. At that moment, in the apartment, Roman and Anna were truly smiling at each other like two guardian angels. They help people meet only when they believe, otherwise, their magical abilities lose their power. Seriously, dreaming and waiting for your person is worth it. Life is more fantastic than any fiction or invention. Open your heart, and someone will surely fill it with happiness. Just believe in it and wait patiently. It's foolish to think that everything will come easily and abundantly. The relationship between a man and a woman is always a long road of compromises. To walk this path without stumbling, one must learn to understand, accept, and yield. To love sincerely and faithfully. If one doesn't want to work on this, well, there's always the alternative, choosing not love, but entertainment, something that requires no obligations, that is unburdened, easy, and essentially empty. Neither Roman nor Berta desired empty happiness. Life had brought them together in the most wonderful way. At least, Lucida explained the philosophy of love and life to her neighbor in just that way, and you couldn't argue with her. Carmela woke up dissatisfied with herself and the world. It felt like some battery inside her had completely lost the remnants of the burning desire that had always pushed her from place to place. She hardly recognized herself. She didn't feel any urge to rush somewhere again. On the contrary, she craved peace, comfort, and full contentment. Her boyfriend was again examining a map at the table, excitedly telling her about the route, the ascent into the mountains, and how he needed to take the tent to the workshop to get it repaired. Carmela was no longer interested in the beauty of the mountains or the condition of their camping shelter. Home. She wanted to go home. But would her sister and parents welcome the lost sheep? The woman mentally ran through her life path, recalling her passion for dramamania. And what was left in the end? She had so many men that there weren't enough fingers on her hands and feet to count them. But had anyone loved her, besides that insane Roman to whom she had taken their daughter? Children? The boy was stillborn. She felt no maternal feelings for the girl. By the way, it was still unclear whether this unexpected child belonged to Roman or the next guy, Alvaro. Soon she would turn 35, but she still felt no desire to deal with babies. Carmela asked herself, "So what do you really want, beautiful girl?" Then she honestly answered herself, "Luxury, wealth, the love of a worthy man, a huge house with plenty of servants, a plot of land near a forest, a river, or a lake. So that I wouldn't forget that I am an Amazon. So I could occasionally escape to freedom, but where would I find such a husband?" Her beauty had faded in the rays of the sun, cold waters, and steppe winds. Her health was no longer perfect, and she was far from having a beautiful and well-groomed body. Such a product would not sell to a wealthy man, and she had foolishly gotten a few tattoos on her body. She looked more like a woman who had been in prison than a free bird with picturesque plumage. Her traveling friend began talking again at the table. He was bustling around, persuading her, promising bright moments, and Carmela stood up and began to gather her things. It was time to put an end to this romance. It had run its course. She felt bored and unfulfilled here. It took her 2 days to get home by train. The fever had led her far astray. Thankfully, she had saved enough for a ticket. Her boyfriend, though he had money, was not known for his generosity. Love had faded. There would be no lively companion on trips, which meant funding was also cut off. He wasn't about to throw money away. Carmela decided not to go to her parents right away. First, she would visit Roman and weave a tale or two, claiming she had been mistaken and that she had always loved only him. He would become malleable in her hands, like soft wax. She would mold him into the husband she wanted, playing out the role of a mother who missed her daughter. And she would arrive at her parents' house like a queen, a respectable married lady with a worthy husband and a now-grown daughter. Her parents would surely be happy with such a return of their daughter. She didn't climb the stairs to the 3rd floor, she flew up them. She immediately noted to herself, "This old house is great, one of the best in the city. It's a place I wouldn't be ashamed to invite my parents and my headstrong sister, who once dared to teach me a lesson." Let her wipe away her tears of envy. "I'm no fool. I have a daughter, and I will have a husband who is quite enviable. Even if he doesn't have a castle surrounded by a forest, he's still no ordinary man in certain circles." At first, there was no reaction to her doorbell. Then she heard some indistinct noise and commotion. Berta opened the door for Carmela. Both women froze in shock. They were snapped out of their stupor by a bright little voice. "Mom, who's there?" "Dad and I have been waiting for you. Come quickly." Berta swiftly closed the door right in front of Carmela's face, feeling no remorse whatsoever. "Anna, you've got the wrong door. Some bright little grasshopper must think it's summer and flew into the entrance for the light." The woman adjusted her apron over her round belly, smiled at her thoughts, and stepped into the room. Roman looked at his partner lovingly, thinking that he would have to ask later what made her suddenly recall a fable. But soon he forgot about someone's visit and the grasshopper. He was about to become a dad for the 2nd time. Right now, they were choosing a crib and a stroller for their son from the catalog. Anna liked the red with white, while he and Berta preferred the blue with blue stripes. But he already knew Anna would convince them anyway. Their daughter was a miracle. They had waited so long for this cozy family happiness. He knew that happiness loves silence, but he so wanted to stick his head out the window and shout, "People, be humane. You will surely reap what you deserve." Now he knew for sure that this truth works.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.